Hello, 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 and Namaste, Witchlings. I hate wearing glasses. Just being honest. Hello, Andrea, and hello, everyone else. How's everybody doing this evening? Whew, we got a show for you tonight, let me tell you. I can see. What a concept. All right, there we go. Hey, Amy. I am not quite blind enough that I can't go without my glasses, but yes. Nope. My house reeks of wet dog right now. I wonder why. All right, everybody. Namaste. Welcome back to Bitchin Witch, the podcast. Ha! This is the podcast where I talk about current events that have me severely pissed off, the systems that keep harming people, and why spiritual bypassing is utter and complete bullshit when real lives are on the line. Hi, I'm Di the Yoga Witch, and if you clicked on this episode, I'm going to assume a few things about you. One, you already know this ain't going to be gentle, sweet, ha-ha, love and light shit. Two, you're not here for sanitized takes or polite outrage. And three, you understand that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is say, what directly the fuck is going on here? Out loud. Because, well, over the past few days, the United States didn't just threaten Venezuela, didn't just posture, didn't just wag a finger, say no, 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 bad, 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 and issue some statements. Oh, no, 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 no. The fucking fascist Cheeto bombed Caracas. And then kidnapped Venezuela's sitting president and first lady. Now, before anybody goes and starts clutching their pearls, yes, Nicolas Maduro absolutely needed to be removed. That can be true at the same time as this being a violent, illegal, imperial shit show. Both things can be true. So, hold that thought, we're going to come back to it. Because what happened here matters not just politically, not just geopolitically, but ethically, right? Right. I am also already very much exhausted by the number of people who are rushing in to say, well, actually, as if legality, morality, and power have ever lined up neatly under empire. Now, let's be clear about the facts before the propaganda machine gets too comfortable. Number one, the U.S. military launched strikes in Venezuela's capital. Number two, there were explosions. Number three, there was chaos. And number four, there were civilians in the city when the bombs fell, because that's how cities fucking work. And during this operation, U.S. forces seized Maduro and dragged him to the United States to stand trial in a court that has absolutely no jurisdiction over a sovereign nation's leader. You can call that an arrest if you want. You can call it a capture. You can call it bringing a dictator to justice. I'm going to call it what it is. A kidnapping carried out through fucking military force. And the speed with which people are willing to cheer that on should scare the fuck out of you. Because this was not about justice. This was not about the Venezuelan people. And it sure as fuck was not about suddenly discovering a moral fucking backbone. This was empire building, this was an empire reminding the world that it believes it gets to decide who governs whom, with bombs if necessary. And if your response is, well, Maduro was corrupt, congratulations, you've identified a problem without addressing the crime used to fucking solve it. I am frustrated and pissed off enough that I am not being able to word straight, and you can bet your sweet fucking ass I'm going to be dropping F-bombs left, right, sideways, and upside down. So, if any of these things offend you, you might want to click away now. So, we do not get to bomb cities and abduct leaders just because we don't like them, not without consequences, and not without setting precedents that will be used again. And not without blood on hands that don't belong to the people making the fucking decisions. No, they're far enough removed that their hands stay white. So today, my friends, we are going to talk about what actually happened, why it happened now, and why the justifications being spoon-fed to the public are flimsy as fuck, and why this moment should be setting off alarm bells and klaxons for anyone who claims to care about human rights, sovereignty, or even, yes, spiritual fucking ethics. Because I am not interested in calm, neutral takes while Empire chews people up and calls a fucking order. Neutrality is not peace. Silence definitely is not wisdom. And I don't follow politics is not a moral stance. It's a fucking privilege. And since some of you found this podcast through yoga or witchcraft spaces, let me say this very, very plainly. If your spirituality requires you to look away from violence, if it only works when things are quiet and comfortable, and if it asks you to breathe deeply instead of saying, this is severely fucked up, that is not spirituality. That is dissociation with a pretty aesthetic. And I would know. Yoga has ethics, yamas, niyamas. Witchcraft has ethics, and ye harm none, do as ye will. Not all of us follow that, but mine boil down to this, all right? Do no harm, but take no fucking shit. Bombing a capital city of another fucking country is harm. Kidnapping a leader without international process is fucking harm. Cheering because it aligns with your political preferences doesn't magically cleanse that harm. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is where ethics live. So, if you're listening and feeling angry, sick to your stomach, conflicted, or just deeply fucking bone tired, you are not broken. You are paying attention, my friends. Take a breath. Ground your body and stay with me here because next we are going to break down how this shit unfolded, what excuses, lousy, miserable, pathetic excuses are already being rolled out, and why abso-fucking-lutely none of them will hold up even under minimal scrutiny. And then we're going to talk about what our practices actually demand of us when the world is not calm, not balanced, as sure as fuck not okay. Take a sip, Di. All right, y'all. Part of me wants to check in with the chat, but let's get through this conversation first. Let's start by being very, very clear about something, because clarity is the first thing Empire tries to steal. This is not about democracy. This is not about protecting anyone. This is not about freedom. This is about oil. It has always been about oil. Venezuela sits on one of the largest proven oil reserves on the goddamn fucking planet. Not hypothetical, not potential, proven, measured, and documented. And that fact alone has sealed its fate for fucking decades. Every single time a U.S. administration suddenly discovers a deep concern for Venezuela, Republican or Democrat, because this wench ain't playing team sports right now with imperialism, it is not because they woke up one morning magically having a moral compass. It's because capitalism demands fuel. Empire demands resources, and the people who live on that land are treated as expendable obstacles to extraction. That is not speculation. That is not conspiracy theory. That's fucking history. This is the same fucking story we've watched on repeat in the Middle East, in Central and South America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia. Different countries, same fucking script every god's damned time. First comes the narrative. They're unstable. They're corrupt. They're dangerous. They need our help. Then come the sanctions, which everybody pretends are peaceful, even though they starve civilians, collapse healthcare systems, and quietly kill people without ever making the evening news. Then comes destabilization, and then regime change talk. Then military action dressed up as responsibility. I don't want responsibilities anymore. And somehow, every fucking time, the oil just happens to end up in friendly hands. Funny how that works, right? And here's the part most people don't like to hear, especially those of us who consider themselves progressive, spiritual, or above politics. You do not get to ignore the material reality underneath the moral storytelling. We can acknowledge Maduro is corrupt. We can acknowledge that his government has harmed people. We can acknowledge that Venezuelans most definitely deserve better leadership. All of that can be true without pretending the U.S. suddenly gives a single solitary flying fuck about Venezuelan well-being. Because if this were about human rights, the U.S. would fucking be drowning in its own God's damned indictments. If this were about democracy, we wouldn't be propping up dictators when they serve our interests and overthrowing governments when they don't. If this were about freedom, we wouldn't be strangling countries economically and then blaming them for collapsing. This is not altruism. This is resource control. And oil is not just fuel, it's fucking power. It determines who moves, who eats, who builds, who freezes, who fucking survives. So when you hear the language of security and stability, translate that properly, please. Security for whom? Stability for whose profits? Because it is never, ever the people living under the fucking bombs. It is never the people whose hospitals lose power under the God's damned sanctions. It is never the people whose children grow up amid shortages created by foreign fucking policy decisions made thousands of miles away. Empire does not care about fucking democracy. Empire cares about access. And when access is threatened, violence becomes justified. Rhetorically first, militarily second. And here's where I want to slow this down for just a minute. Because this is where spiritual bypassing creeps in hardcore. There is a deep, deep temptation, especially in spiritual spaces, to say, well, geopolitics is complicated. We don't know all the details. There are bad actors on all sides. And sure, complexity does exist. But complexity does not erase patterns. And when the pattern is oil-rich country, economic pressure, moral outrage campaign, military action, you don't need a fucking crystal ball. You need a goddamn history book. This isn't about whether Maduro deserved removal. This is about who gets to decide how and at what cost to the fucking civilians. Because bombing a capital city is not liberation, sanctions are sure as fuck not compassion, and kidnapping a leader without international process is not justice. It is dominance. And if your spiritual practice can't recognize domination when it's wrapped in the language of doing good, then it's not protecting your fucking ethics, it's numbing them. So, before we even get into timelines, justifications, or legal arguments, I need this context to be locked the fuck in. What we are watching is not a one-off event. It is not unprecedented, and it sure as fuck is not accidental. It is empire doing what empire does, securing resources, enforcing hierarchy, and trusting that enough people will be distracted, tired, or confused enough to just let it slide. fucking white people being fucking colonizers again. And the cost is always paid by people who never consented to be a part of the motherfucking equation in the first place. Next, we're going to walk through how this unfolded. Not the press release version that Blondie McBlondeface is pushing. Not the patriotic version, but the actual, genuine sequence of events and the language choices that made this shit possible. Because once you see the machinery clearly, it becomes a whole lot fucking harder to swallow the bullshit they be selling. Drink. I have never been so fucking ashamed of my status as a veteran of our armed forces as I am today. Now, what absolutely enrages me the most, and I mean truly bone deep, soul deep, enrages me, is how fast the conversation just jumps to strategy, sanctions, leverage, interest, stability, risk assessment. All of these wonderfully bloodless antiseptic words that sound very reasonable if you never stop to ask who they're crushing under their weight. Because when people in power talk about Venezuela, they don't talk about it like a place where human beings live. No, there are no people in Venezuela. They talk about it like it's a fucking chessboard and they're just little pawns to be moved around and knocked over. They talk about it like a problem to be managed, a resource to be secured, a situation to be handled. They don't talk about families trying to keep food on the table. They don't talk about kids whose schools shut down when the fucking infrastructure collapses. They don't talk about the elders who lose access to medications when supply chains are disrupted. They don't talk about those of us who are disabled, the disabled people whose survival depends on systems that sanctions shred to pieces. Well, they don't fucking give a shit about the disabled anyway, so, we don't talk about people who are already living under economic strain and instability before the fucking bombs started falling and leaders started getting dragged across borders. Because once you start to talk about people here, the math gets uncomfortable, and empire hates uncomfortable math. Instead, they talk about assets, oil fields, ports, markets, influence. And when you hear that language, when human beings disappear and resources take their place, that is your cue to recognize dehumanization in real time. Because no one drops bombs on families. They drop bombs on targets. No one starves children. They impose sanctions. No one kidnaps a leader in front of a nation. They conduct a precision operation. Language is how violence gets laundered. And this isn't just about Venezuela. Because make no mistake, every time this shit happens, we pay for it too, whether people want to admit that or not. We pay for it in rising prices because war and instability always jack up the cost of fuel, food, and basic fucking necessities. We pay for it in diverted resources. Money that could have gone to healthcare, education, housing, disability support, rerouted instead into military budgets and private contractors who profit off endless conflict. We pay for it in increased surveillance because every foreign threat magically justifies new ways to watch, track, and control people at home. We pay for it in the normalization of violence as policy, where bombing cities and kidnapping leaders becomes just another tool in the box instead of a line that should never fucking be crossed. Empire does not just harm people over there. Empire eats everyone eventually. It just eats marginalized people first. It eats the poor people first. It eats disabled people first. It eats black and brown people first. It eats immigrants first. It eats queer and trans people first. It eats anyone and everyone who doesn't have enough power, money, or proximity to fucking protection to be considered worth sparing. And then, once it's normalized enough, it starts eating the rest of you too. That's the part people don't want to hear, especially those folks who think that they're insulated because they live in the imperial core. Let's all think back to the Hunger Games and what happened in the Capitol. You are not outside this system, my friends. You are not protected by silence. You are not spared by pretending it's complicated. You are being conditioned to accept violence as inevitable, to accept suffering as collateral damage, conditioned to accept that some lives are simply the price of doing business. And my darlings, that conditioning does not stop at borders. It comes home. It shows up when police budgets balloon while social services shrink. It shows up when disabled people are told there's no funding while bombs get a blank fucking check. It shows up when surveillance tools built for war get turned inward on protesters, activists, and anyone who doesn't fall in line. So, when I hear people say, well, that's just geopolitics, what I hear is I've been trained not to feel this. And that training is the real danger. Because the moment you stop seeing people, you stop resisting harm. And this is where I need to say something else very, very, very fucking plainly. Especially to anyone listening from spiritual spaces. If your practice allows you to stay calm while other people are being crushed, if your peace depends on emotional distance from suffering, and if your serenity requires you to look away, baby, that is not enlightenment. That is numbness. Anger, grief, and outright fucking horror are appropriate responses to violence. They are signs that your empathy is still alive. Empathy is not a sin. Empathy is not a bad thing. Because I refuse, abso-fucking-lutely refuse, to pretend that being spiritually evolved means being okay with any of this. Because there is nothing holy about collateral damage. And there is absolutely nothing sacred about exploitation. And there is nothing enlightened about watching empire devour lives and call it fucking strategy. And next, we're going to talk about how this violence gets justified, the narratives, the excuses, the moral and mental gymnastics that make people feel quite okay about the unacceptable. Because understanding that machinery is the first step in refusing to be swallowed by it. I'm going to take a sip. All right. My Sanskrit word of the week from my Witchlings is Sauca. And it's usually translated as purity or cleanliness, which honestly does it a massive fucking disservice. Because when people hear purity, they think moral superiority, spotless, innocent, untainted. That's not what Sauca is asking for, y'all. Sauca is about clarity. It's about removing what clouds perception, not pretending mess does not exist. It's about stripping away illusion, clearing residue, and scraping the stories we're told to make violence sound reasonable and scraping off the stories we're told to make violence sound reasonable and domination sound necessary. Sauca doesn't say be clean so you can feel good about yourself. Sauca says clean your lens. And then please let me tell you, once you actually clean the lens here, the picture is painfully fucking clear. A powerful man is willing to destabilize. A powerful man is willing to destabilize an entire fucking region for personal and corporate gain. And he does not give one flying fuck about who gets hurt in the process. That's it. That's the clarity. No heroic narrative, no noble intentions, no spiritual justification, just power, greed, and violence wearing a very expensive and ill-fitting suit. And this is where people start getting a little bit uncomfortable because Sauca doesn't let you hide behind vibes. You don't get to say, well, there are bad actors on all sides here, when one side has bombs and the other has civilians. You don't get to say, it's complicated, when the pattern has repeated itself for fucking generations. You don't get to say, I'm choosing peace, when you're actually choosing ignorance. Sauca asks, what are you refusing to see because seeing it would require you to change how you live, how you vote, how you practice, how you speak? Because clarity is not neutral. Clarity creates responsibility. And this is the part of yoga philosophy people love to skip over because it's easier to talk about breath work than accountability. Sauca is one of the niyamas, the personal observances. They are not suggestions. They are not aesthetic preferences, ethical commitments. And nowhere does it say Sauca is comfortable. Cleaning a wound hurts. Removing infection hurts like a motherfucker. Scraping shit out of your eyes hurts. Oh, God, I don't want to think about that one. But pretending the infection isn't there is, well, that's how you lose the whole fucking limb. So, when you apply Sauca to what's happening right now, what falls away? The idea that this is about democracy, that this is about protection, or about freedom. Those are narratives. And Sauca dissolves the narratives. What remains is action and consequences. Bombs fell, people were harmed, a nation was destabilized, and a leader was seized without international due process. That doesn't magically become okay because the person kidnapped was corrupt. Sauca doesn't ask, did you like him? Sauca asks, what did this do? And then once you see it clearly, once you name it honestly, you don't get to pretend that you didn't. That's the real discipline of Sauca, my friends. You cannot unknow what you now know. Mental bleach does not yet exist. You cannot clean the lens and then smear shit back on it because the view makes you uncomfortable. And this is where spiritual bypassing tries to sneak in hard. People want to say, I don't want to hold on to anger. What they mean is, I don't want to hold on to awareness. Anger isn't the problem. Delusion is. Sauca doesn't tell you to stop feeling. It tells you to stop lying to yourself, most of all. And if seeing clearly makes you angry, grieving, nauseous, or furious, fuck yeah, good. That means the lens is working. Because the opposite of clarity is not peace, it's sedation. And we are not Huey Lewis in the News saying we want to be sedated. I think it was Huey Lewis in the News. Anyway, so I'm not interested in a spirituality that numbs people into compliance while empire keeps fucking devouring lives. Sauca says, see it, name it, do not dress it up, and don't look away. And once you've done that, once the lens is good and clean, the question becomes unavoidable. What do you do now? Because clarity without action is just another form of self-soothing. And now, we're going to talk about why silence is not neutrality, why staying out of it is still a choice, and what ethical practice actually demands when you can see the harm clearly and choose to do not a fucking goddamn thing. Because once Sauca has done its job, you don't get to pretend you didn't understand the assignment, my dear. Moving on to our yama. Ahimsa. Let's talk. Ahimsa is the yogic principle of non-harm. And it is hands fucking down one of the most misunderstood and frankly most abused concepts in modern yoga culture. Because somewhere along the line, Ahimsa got sanded down into something unrecognizable. It got turned into be nice, don't rock the boat, stay positive, protect your peace. And my personal favorite, the one that makes my eye twitch every single fucking time, just focus on love. No. No. Abso-fucking-lutely not. Ahimsa is not passivity. It is not silence, nor is it spiritual sedation. Ahimsa is an ethical commitment to reducing harm wherever possible. Not just interpersonal harm, not just hurt feelings, but harm caused by systems, governments, institutions, and unchecked fucking power. And that distinction matters. Because if your version of ahimsa only applies when it's easy, only when it keeps you comfortable, and when it doesn't cost you anything, then that is not fucking ahimsa. That, my dear, is avoidance with incense. Non-harm does not mean never make anyone uncomfortable. It means do not allow harm to continue unchallenged when you have awareness and capacity. And yes, reducing harm means speaking up sometimes. Sometimes it means refusing to fucking comply. Sometimes it means calling bullshit loudly and clearly so it cannot keep hiding behind politeness. Ahimsa does not mean you let people burn the house down while you chant in the fucking corner. Because let's be real for just a minute here. Silence does not stop violence. Silence protects that shit. Silence protects power and systems that benefit from harm continuing uninterrupted. Silence protects the people who have already had the most insulation from fucking consequences. And modern yoga culture has done a truly impressive job of turning ahimsa into a tool that benefits the powerful. Because we're told anger isn't spiritual. Judgment lowers your vibration. Conflict means you're not evolved. Which is incredibly convenient if you're the one doing the fucking harm. Because anger is not violence. Anger is information. Anger is telling you a boundary has been crossed, and anger tells you something is unjust. It is telling you harm is happening, and your nervous system fucking knows it. What becomes violence is what you do when anger is suppressed, denied, or forced underground in the name of being good. Ahimsa doesn't ask you to disappear yourself. It asks you to intervene wisely. And here's the part people really don't want to grapple with. Ahimsa is not neutral. Choosing not to act when harm is happening is still a choice. And it almost always favors the status quo. If bombs are falling and you say nothing, if people are being starved by sanctions and you say nothing, if entire fucking regions are destabilized for profit and you say nothing, that silence does not reduce harm. It allows it to fucking continue unopposed. Reducing harm, letting it keep rolling unchecked. Which one is more ahimsa? And I need to say this one, especially to people who think they're being spiritually mature by not engaging. Disengagement is not virtue when it fucking protects violence. Ahimsa does not mean you side with power because you're afraid of conflict. It means you side with life. And siding with life is fucking messy, uncomfortable, and it often makes you really fucking unpopular. Because systems of harm rely on people being more afraid of awkward conversations than of injustice. Ahimsa asks a harder question. Where is harm happening, and what is within your capacity to interrupt it? Not fix it single-handedly, not save the world, interrupt it. That might look like speaking out or withdrawing support. It might look like refusing propaganda or educating yourself instead of repeating the same fucking talking points. And yes, sometimes it looks like righteous anger expressed clearly, intentionally, and without apology. Because non-harm does not mean never raise your voice. It means do not become complicit. And I will say it again, much louder for the fucking people in the back. Ahimsa does not mean you let people burn the house down while you chant in the fucking corner. If the house is on fire, chanting is not ethics. Action is. And next, we're going to talk about why silence is not neutrality, how staying out of it is still a moral position, and why pretending you're above the mess doesn't actually keep your hands clean, because ahimsa is not about looking pure. My friends, it's about reducing harm, even when that requires you to be loud, inconvenient, and very fucking clear. This is where my personal philosophy comes in. My loves, do no harm, but take no shit. I say it all the time, and I'm going to keep saying it until I'm blue in the motherfucking face. Do no harm, but take no shit. That's it. That's the whole fucking thing. And no, it is not a slogan. It is not a vibe. It is not a cute line for a fucking coffee mug. It is ahimsa with a spine. Because somewhere along the way, non-harm got confused with self-erasure. Ethics got confused with politeness, and spirituality got confused with obedience. I have never been the most obedient. This philosophy draws a hard line, and I love hard lines when they're honest. It means I will not initiate violence, I will not excuse violence, and I will not participate in systems that rely on exploitation, domination, or dehumanization. But I also will not stay quiet while harm is justified, sanitized, or rebranded as fucking necessary. I will not swallow propaganda just because it's wrapped in official language. I sure as fuck will not pretend that bombs falling on cities becomes ethical if the target is unpopular. I will not accept that this is how the world works as a moral argument. Because this is how the world works is how harm fucking stays permanent. Taking no shit means naming greed as greed, not economic interest. It means naming violence as violence, not intervention. It means recognizing when power is lying their asses off to protect themselves and refusing to repeat the lie. And yes, it means being willing to piss a few people the fuck off. Because here's the truth a lot of people don't like admitting. Every meaningful ethical stance in history has been called disruptive, rude, radical, or dangerous by the people benefiting from the status quo. Let us, reference Martin Luther King Jr. Take no shit does not mean being cruel. It does not mean being reckless. And it sure as fuck does not mean becoming what you oppose. It means not surrendering your clarity for the sake of comfort. Refusing to gaslight yourself when your gut, your values, and your ethics are all screaming this is wrong. And let's talk about anger for a second, because I am quite good with anger. And because anger gets demonized seriously in spiritual spaces. Anger is treated like a moral fucking failure. Like a sign that you haven't healed enough, or proof that you're not enlightened. Bullshit. Anger, when rooted in ethics, is not the enemy. Unexamined anger can be dangerous. Sure, yes, we can agree on that. But suppressed anger is explosive. And righteous anger, honey, righteous anger has fueled every major movement towards justice humanity has ever fucking seen. Anger is what happens when love encounters injustice and refuses to look away. Anger is what says, no, this crosses a line. Do no harm does not mean never feel anger. It means don't let the anger turn you into something you're not. Take no shit means don't let fear turn you into something you regret. This philosophy asks for discernment, not docility. It asks, where is harm happening, who benefits from it, and what is within my capacity to resist it without becoming violent myself. Sometimes that resistance looks quiet. Sometimes it's fucking loud as hell. Sometimes it looks like saying, no, I am not okay with this, even when that makes other people uncomfortable as hell. Because comfort has never been a reliable moral compass. And now if you're listening to this and thinking, but Di, what difference does it make what I say or do? Here's the thing, honey. Empire depends on enough people believing they're too small to matter, too tired to resist, too spiritual to get involved. Taking no shit does not mean you personally dismantle global power structures. It means you don't lend them your silence, you don't repeat their narratives, and you sure as fuck don't confuse obedience with peace. It means you don't abandon your ethics just because harm is happening far, far away or wrapped in official language. Do no harm, but take no shit is how I stay grounded without becoming numb. That's how I practice yoga without pretending it exists outside the fucking world. It's how I practice my witchcraft without turning it into aesthetic escapism. It's how I stay human in a system that profits from people going quiet. And now, if that makes me too political, too angry, too loud, or too inconvenient, good. Ethics were never meant to be polite. Now, next, we're going to bring some of this home. We're going to bring it all home. Because what this moment asks of us, what responsibility looks like without savior fantasies, and how to stay engaged without burning ourselves to the ground is what we're about to talk about. Because clarity, non-harm, and resistance do not mean self-destruction. They mean choosing again and again and again to stay awake. Let's check in with the chat right quick. Cauldron. Oh, hello, Chuck Monster. My cauldron sits on my altar. Thank you very much. Ah. I see Maya. I see Andrea. Like I said. Yes. Oh! Amy, that one was okay. It's called Skyclad, but yes. You mean this one? Please, my glasses won't fit in it, honey. What's your question, Deborah? Maya, I will show you the altar that's, or the cauldron, the altar that's on my cauldron. Jesus, Joseph, Mary, and my fucking ass mother. The cauldron that's on my altar. Yes, I do. Oh boy. Yep. No, I'm just grateful Mike isn't in here. I know. All right. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Somebody mentioned Mrs. What's-It. Holy shit. We're thinking about it, Andrea. Somebody actually knows A Wrinkle in Time. I'm kind of happy about that one. Deborah, we can talk about that later. I see Mrs. What's-It. Mark's check. Yeah, no, Jimmy Dean's here. You have come into the middle of my podcast, The Bitchin Witch. Madeline L'Engle has been one of my favorite authors since I was a little kid. Okay, we are going to go back to the show. I really want to chit-chat with some of these people, though. All right. I think so, yes. Click. That would be it. Hey, look at that. All right, y'all. Back to the show. Let's talk about anger for just a quick moment. Because we are taught, especially in spiritual spaces, that anger is something to transcend, outgrow, or purify ourselves of. We're told it's low vibration, that it means we haven't healed enough, that if we were really enlightened, we'd be calm all the time. Fucking bullshit. Anger is not a moral failure. It is information. Anger is what tells you something is wrong. It is what tells you when a boundary has been crossed, and it is what tells you harm is happening right now, not hypothetically and not someday. Anger is your nervous system saying, pay attention. The problem is not anger. The problem is what happens to anger in a society that benefits from people being compliant. Because anger doesn't just disappear just because you suppress it. It gets redirected, manipulated, and fucking weaponized. And more often than not, it gets turned sideways, away from systems of power and toward people with less power. That's how you get poor people blaming other poor people. That's how you get marginalized communities pitted against each other. It is how you get outrage aimed at symptoms instead of the causes. That's not an accident either. A system that relies on exploitation cannot afford for anger to be accurately aimed. So, it teaches you that anger itself is the problem, not the injustice that caused it. And spiritual culture has been especially effective at this one. You're told to raise your vibration instead of naming harm. You're told to send love and be empathetic instead of setting boundaries. You're told to detach instead of resisting, which sounds peaceful until you realize who benefits from it. Because when anger is dismissed as unspiritual, doing what they're doing without being wait, I skipped a line. I hate it when my brain does this. All right. So when anger is dismissed as unspiritual, the powerful get to keep doing what they're doing without being challenged. And let me be incredibly clear here, my friends. My anger today is not about vengeance or punishment or about revenge fantasies or bloodlust or destruction. No. Not me. Thank you. My anger is about clarity. It's about care, and it is about refusing to normalize cruelty just because it's happening at scale. My anger is about refusing to treat violence as inevitable, acceptable, or fucking necessary. Anger can be destructive, yes, when it's unexamined, unmanaged, or turned inward. But anger can also be productive. Anger is what says, no, this is not okay. No, this goes too far. And no, someone has to interrupt this. Anger is what fueled labor rights, civil rights, and every fucking movement that has said, actually, we deserve better than this. Those movements were not born from serenity. Thank you, browncoats. They were born from people refusing to swallow injustice quietly. And here's the part I want people to really sit with. The opposite of anger is not peace. The opposite of anger is apathy. And apathy is incredibly useful to systems of harm. Apathy doesn't challenge power. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't notice patterns. It just lets cruelty continue uninterrupted. So, when I see people more upset about tone than bombs falling on cities, more concerned with negativity than with human fucking suffering, and more invested in appearing calm than being ethical, I don't see enlightenment. I see fear of discomfort dressed up as wisdom. Anger doesn't mean you've lost control. It means you still care. The work is not to get rid of anger. The work is to listen to it, aim it accurately, ground it in ethics, and then to refuse to let it be hijacked by narratives designed to protect power. And when anger is rooted in care, when it's paired with clarity, boundaries, and restraint, it becomes a force for protection, not destruction. That's the anger I'm talking about. And next, we're going to talk about responsibility without saviorism, what it actually means to respond ethically without burning ourselves out or pretending we can fix everything alone. Because staying awake doesn't mean destroying yourself. It means choosing again and again and again and again to stay human in a system that profits from people going numb. Give me my water popper. I know. Give me a second. Oh, sorry. All right. Now, this is where my organization, the Civic Care Collective, comes in. Because, that's okay. When governments fail, and they will fail, trust me, community care becomes a form of resistance. Not someday, not hypothetically, right fucking now, my friends. Mutual aid is not charity, it is survival. Charity implies hierarchy. Someone with excess deciding who is worthy of help. Yeah, no. Mutual aid says we are all in this together and we do not wait for permission to keep each other alive. Solidarity is not performative. It's necessary, and it's not a hashtag. It's not a temporary surge of outrage. It's the long, unglamorous work of showing up again and again and again, even when it's boring, inconvenient, and when no one is applauding. And that, my friends, is what civic care actually means. Civic care means recognizing that people are not expendable resources. Not here, not abroad, not ever. It means centering human impact over economic profit. It means asking who is being harmed before asking who benefits. It means refusing the logic that says suffering is acceptable if it stabilizes markets or protects power. Civic care means saying clearly and without apology, we keep each other alive when systems refuse to. Because systems are not broken by accident. They are functioning exactly as designed, prioritizing profit, control, and efficiency over human life. And when you understand that, care stops being sentimental and starts being strategic. Care is how people survive sanctions, surveillance, displacement, poverty, and abandonment. Care is not weakness. It is infrastructure. And this is where Sauca, clarity, matters yet again. Because clarity lets us engage without burning ourselves to the ground. Exhausted people are so much easier to control. Overwhelmed people are a fuck ton easier to manipulate. Disconnected people are so much easier to pit against each other. That, my friends, is not incidental. Burnout is not just a personal failure, it is a fucking political outcome. When people are constantly depleted, they don't organize, they don't question, they don't resist. They collapse inward. Civic care says we don't let that happen, not to ourselves, and sure as fuck not to each other. But let me be very, very, very clear about what this does not mean. It does not mean martyring yourself. It does not mean carrying the weight of the world alone. And it sure as fuck doesn't mean thinking you have to fix everything or save everyone. That is not care. That, my love, is unsustainable ego dressed up as responsibility. Collective responsibility means shared load. It means doing what is within your capacity and trusting others to do the same. It means building networks instead of heroes or choosing consistency over intensity. And yes, it means rest. Rest is political. And rest is how you stay clear-eyed instead of reactive. Rest is how you prevent your anger from being hijacked. Rest is how you keep your ethics intact under pressure. Truth, care, and rest, all political. Not because everything is partisan, but because everything that affects who lives and who suffers has power baked into it. And refusing to engage with that reality doesn't make you neutral. It makes you easier to manage. The Civic Care Collective exists because isolation is one of Empire's favorite weapons. When people are separated, exhausted, and convinced they're alone, they are so much easier to control. When people are connected, grounded in clarity, mutual care, and shared responsibility, power starts to crack. Not all at once, and not dramatically, but steadily. And that's how real change happens. Not through grand gestures, but through sustained ethical presence. So no, we're not saving the world today, but we are refusing to abandon each other. We are refusing to pretend that cruelty is inevitable, and that matters because Empire relies on despair. Civic Care says we choose each other anyway, and that choice, made over and over and over, quietly and collectively, is far more dangerous to unjust systems than any bomb ever could be. I need to say this plainly, without cushioning, softening, or dressing it up. If your spiritual practice prevents you from seeing harm, my dear, that is not enlightenment. That is avoidance. If your version of peace requires silence in the face of violence, it is not peace, it is privilege. And I know that makes people defensive. That's fine. Sit with it. Because spiritual bypassing is one of the most socially acceptable ways to abandon ethics while still feeling good about yourself. It sounds gentle, mature, and evolved. But what it actually does is remove responsibility. Yoga, my friends, was never meant to make us docile. Witchcraft, sure as fuck, was never meant to make us compliant. These traditions were not born in comfort. Yoga comes from a lineage shaped by oppression, colonization, and control, with its ethical framework was never about numbing out. It was about liberation. Liberation of the mind, liberation from delusion, from harm, internal and external. Witchcraft, historically, has always been practiced by people on the margins. People without institutional power, or people who needed discernment, community, and resistance just to fucking survive. Neither tradition exists to help you tolerate injustice more gracefully. They exist to help you see clearly, act ethically, and stay connected to your humanity when systems would much rather you dissociate. Spiritual bypassing, my friends, does the opposite. It says, don't be angry, don't judge, don't engage, just send love. And again, ask yourself, who benefits from that? Because it never is the people being bombed. It is never the people being starved by the sanctions. And it is never the people living under systems that treat them as disposable. Spiritual bypassing protects power by making resistance feel unspiritual. It reframes disengagement as wisdom, silence as maturity, and apathy as peace. And I am done pretending that is harmless. Sauca, clarity, demands honesty. And honesty means admitting when something is fucked up beyond belief. It means saying, this is wrong, even when you don't have a perfect solution. It means naming violence as violence, even when it's inconvenient. Refusing to hide behind aesthetics, language, or spiritual jargon to avoid discomfort. Because clarity does not care about your brand, your image, or whether people think you're nice. Clarity cares about truth. And once you see clearly, you don't get to unknow it. You don't get to say, that's not my lane, when harm is happening in front of you and you benefit from the system fucking causing it. You don't get to outsource ethics to vibes. Spiritual practices are tools. They can help you stay regulated while facing hard truths, or they can be used to avoid those truths entirely. And the difference matters, because avoidance doesn't stop harm. It allows it to continue. Complicity doesn't always look like active participation. More often, it looks like quiet disengagement. So no, I'm not interested in spirituality that makes people easier to fucking manage. I'm not interested in peace that depends on other people's suffering. And I'm sure as the fuck not interested in practices that require me to pretend violence is just part of the process. Seeing clearly is not negativity. Naming harm is not being too political. Refusing to look away is not a failure of compassion. It is compassion with integrity. And if your spirituality cannot survive honesty, if it collapses the moment you name injustice, then it was never about truth in the first place. It was about comfort. And comfort, once again, has never been a reliable moral guide. So what do we do with this? Well. I know. So, what do we do with this clarity? Well, because clarity without direction can turn into despair real fast, and despair is exactly what systems of harm are counting on. Well, first, we do not doom scroll ourselves into paralysis. Being constantly flooded with horror does not make you more ethical. It just makes you numb, dysregulated, and so much easier to manipulate. Staying informed is not the same thing as being constantly plugged into outrage. Clarity requires discernment, not saturation. Second, we do not pretend that one person can fix everything. That particular lie shows up in two flavors. Number one, the savior fantasy, and number two, the hopeless collapse. Both are traps. You are not responsible for dismantling empire by yourself. And the fact that you can't fix everything does not absolve you from doing something. Third, we do not collapse into despair. Despair feels honest, but it's not neutral. It shuts down imagination, connection, and action. And systems of power absolutely love despair because despair keeps people isolated and inert. So what do? Well, we stay informed, intentionally and compulsively. Excuse me, y'all. We learn patterns instead of chasing every fucking headline. We question narratives instead of swallowing them whole. We support mutual aid, not as charity, but as solidarity. We give what we can. We show up where we're able. We remember that survival has always been collective. We talk to each other. Real conversations, not hot takes, not performative outrage, actual, genuine connection. Because isolation is one of the most effective tools of control. And talking, really talking, breaks that spell. We rest when we need to, not as a reward or as an indulgence, but as a strategy. Rest keeps our nervous systems from being hijacked. Rest keeps our anger from being misdirected. And best of all, rest keeps us human. And we absolutely refuse to be gaslit into believing that greed is leadership, violence is protection, and domination is stability. That silence is wisdom. We name things honestly, even when that honesty makes people uncomfortable, because ahimsa is a practice. It is something you choose again and again, not just in how you treat people close to you, but in how you relate to systems of power. Sauca is a practice. It asks you to keep cleaning the lens, noticing when narratives creep back in, noticing when you're tempted to look away, noticing when comfort starts replacing truth. Care is a practice. It's not a mood, not a personality trait, or a discipline. And none of these practices, my friends, are passive. They require attention, discernment, boundaries, and they require you to stay awake without burning yourself alive. Have we hammered that particular point home tonight? You do not need to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And there's the balance, my friends. Staying engaged without becoming consumed, and staying angry without becoming cruel, and staying clear without becoming hopeless. You're allowed to take breaks. You're allowed to step back. You are allowed to tend your own body and mind, but you are not required to pretend you don't see what you see. Clarity doesn't demand perfection, my loves. It demands honesty. And if all you do today is refuse to repeat a lie, refuse to look away, or refuse to abandon your ethics for the sake of comfort, well, honey, that counts. Because staying human in an inhumane system is not nothing. It is the work. Now, let's check in with the chat again, y'all. Okay. I'm going to take a sip. Okay. Oh, God. Okay. Hold on. Let me scroll back to the last thing I saw. Oh, I see Will. Good Lord. I see that. Nope. All right, here we go. Ba-doo, ba-doo, ba-doo. Just checking what's been being said. Give me a second to catch up with myself. I see that. All right. Do-do-do-do. Yep. Oh, God. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is one of my favorite books, Mark. Wait a minute. Isn't Mark's Check the one who also likes? Yup. Man, Mark's Check and I have similar taste in books. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and Madeline Lingle? Hell yeah. At a Vegas, eventually. I believe that we can do it eventually. Oh, I actually gave Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance in my in Christmas book swap of 24. It's a good book. You should read it. Ooh. Whoops. That's okay. All right. And that, my loves, is my rant for tonight. Oh, Lord. Good place for it. Same. Part of my rant with all of this, especially what's going on in South America, I am a service-connected disabled veteran. And I am watching what is going on, and I am just in abject horror. And I feel so bad for my brothers and sisters in uniform, because I know they must feel like shit with the orders that are coming down. Meat is murder. Tasty, tasty murder. Anyway, this particular event has me absolutely raging. Oh, I'm sure it will. That'll be hilarious, too. It's not going to be the fact that I dropped about 500 F-bombs in this. No. All right, you guys. The meds that the Navy put me on, and the how many surgeries am I up to on my feet that made it so I couldn't walk for how long? C'est la vie. All right, my loves. If you want to catch more Die the Yoga Witch, I am here every day, Sunday through Thursday, with Die's Daily Divinations and Self-Care that rolls into Chilling with the Witchlings. Fridays, we do Coffee and Cues, which is basically Coffee and Chit Chat with the Yoga Witch. I have my podcasts Tuesday night, which is this one, Bitchin Witch. Thursday night, we have the Yoga Witch Cauldron. And there's the schedule. Thank you, my love. And with that, I will say let's all now go out there and spread love, spread joy, and spread kindness, because there is already enough darkness and hate in this world, as we've been talking about. So please let us all choose to be steady lights for those finding their way through it. And then make sure you tell your loved ones in all their forms, 2 legs, 4 legs, wings, fur, scales, paws, or claws, that they do matter very much deeply to you. Time moves faster than any of us realize, and the chances to say I love you are never guaranteed. Now, if you take one thing and one thing only away from everything that I do here every day, I would like it to be that you always, always, always remember you are loved, you are wanted, you are needed, and your purpose here is real and genuine, even if you haven't figured it out yet. I was 45 before I found my place in this world. Now, I love you guys to death. Stay informed, stay angry, and stay magical. I love you guys to bits. Namaste, my witchlings.